Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
My time's
I recognize myself for a couple of minutes. Ms. Council, this questions are to you. In 2009, again, I know this preceded you, the VA abandoned the scheduling improvements that it had been working on since 2000, started over. August in 2015, the VA announced it had contracted with 2 companies for a medical appointment scheduling system, the MASS system. And then it appears this is like the 3rd try in 15 years at addressing scheduling issues in the VA. And again, I recognize that of that 15 years, you've only been there for 8 months. What's the current status of the MASS project?
There were 2 parallel processes going on for scheduling. MASS was one, and then there was also a mobile product being developed called VAR, and also updates to Vista called VSE. VSE and VAR will start rollout next month in April nationally. They've been piloted, and they basically allow the ability to change our scheduling processes. I don't know, do we have the posters for the scheduling system? The current scheduling system is something from, you mentioned COBOL, but this is probably from the 60s. If you can look at it, you'll see that it shows the green screen, and then also, you don't have, okay. You see that it's an old dot matrix screen that also doesn't allow people to really know what they're leading to. The VAR and the VSE addresses this. So far, 95% of the users like the new product, and the idea was that if these could not deliver, that we would have through MASS, which was an IDIQ contract, an ability to move forward. MASS has been put on hold until the Deputy Secretary looks at these new products, and right now, if these new products roll out fine, we will stay with those new products. The $624 million aligned with MASS, where there was never to spend up to that level. Since it is an IDIQ, it is a task order kind of contract, and so it was there to support if these did not work, but we will be rolling out in April with both of those products, one mobile and one into the system.
So if VSE and VER work, we're not going to MASS.
They are working today, and if they fully meet our needs, and I think there's also a misnomer on MASS. MASS also includes a workflow and a scheduling capability of rooms. So it was a much broader look, and we wanted something for scheduling right away, and right now, VSE and VAR seem to meet the needs.
So are Epic and Systems Made Simple, are they involved in VER and VSE, or were they to be involved in MASS?
They actually are part of the MASS contract.
So the folks that are implementing VSE and VER, are any of them involved in the previous attempts by the VA to do scheduling?
Based on the information that we have, no, that would not be the case.
Well, I find that a very good thing. Will the future of, will the VSE and VER, well, if VSE and VER are ultimately working, we're going to keep that, and it's not going to potentially be grounded by any commercial off-the-shelf systems, correct?
Not at this time, and that is what part of the reason why we are looking for a digital health platform. The fact is, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, our need to really understand where we need to go for the next 25 years means we really need to make a hard decision and start to think about what we have to do for care in the community, what we have to do for ACA, what we have to do for the number of women veterans, and make it a much more fluid. Dr. Shulkin, who heads up the VHA, and myself are really just not affecting what we're doing with Vista, because Vista 4 is scheduled and is working and is going to roll out as planned into 2018, but to really say, what's the next level of platform? Who should we partner with? How do we make this happen? We're looking at the work with the DOD to see what they've learned and taking that information and also leveraging it. And we're meeting with industry experts to ensure that what we have in place, what we leave behind when we move on, the next set of leaders can take and move forward with.
My last question before we get to Mr. Connolly, how many clinics are currently in this test program using VSE and VER? Rough estimate.
This is my account manager
Absolutely.
for VHA, a new function. It says rolling out to 10 core as the pilot, and then based on those pilot feedback, it will be going out to the nation.
Yeah, I'd love to know the 10 places it's going, because I'd be interested in hearing how it's going from them. And with that, I'd like to recognize the distinguished gentleman.
My time. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm going to recognize myself for 5 minutes. Mr. Arante, do you have, what are your thoughts on the decision to pursue VER and VSE and put mass on hold?
I'm going to let my
Mr. Bowman.
matter expert discuss.
Yeah, obviously VA's had some history, trouble with their scheduling system, so changes need to be made. I think the question is whether or not they're worthwhile investments and whether or not they're going to have an immediate impact to help with the scheduling. So pursuing these make a lot of sense, but whether or not you're going to see an immediate impact, that's really the question.
Ms. Counsel, what immediate impact do you think you're going to see with the deployment of VSE and VER?
The usability of the systems are just so much better than what's currently available. We will make sure we send you the depiction. When you see what's currently available, you'll get it right away. And I think once I saw it, I understood the difficulty and having to move from screen to check on things to make a scheduled appointment.
So I'm still trying to wrap my head around all this. Why pursue this versus trying to get something off the shelf that you could possibly deploy a little bit sooner, especially if we had $624 million available for that? Am I not understanding this correctly?
Yeah, I think I won't speak on behalf of the Deputy Secretary, but the way it was explained to me was they wanted to make sure that we were going to do something with scheduling. And we didn't want to necessarily believe that if we created it here, we couldn't leverage a piece of software, which, by the way, MASS is Epic software. And so the real question is, if we couldn't do, we were going to do one or the other. And I think what we found is that if we just needed pure scheduling and we needed a mobile capability, we were able to create that and it integrate into Vista very simply. But the team had to try it, make it work, and I think they had an error to spare and really wanted to make sure we did the right thing on behalf of the veteran and getting this access dealt with. But I do not want to put words in the mouth of the Deputy Secretary, but that is how it's explained.
So this was a decision by the Deputy Secretary to pursue VSC and VER over MASS or some other commercial off-the-shelf technology.
It was actually with, and then to run a pilot, and then based on the experiential relationship between that software and this one, which one really was best. But when Dr. Shulkin came in, when I came in, he really wanted to move fast. We wanted to get this access going, and we wanted to go with the fastest solution possible. And as I mentioned, one of the key things that we've got to really take a hard look at is the overall digital health platform, not just EHR, not just continuing to put more money into Vista, but really say we have Vista 4, it's delivering on the things it needs to, it's keeping us in the regulatory responsibility that we have. But what's the new? What's the thing that we must do to enable the veteran anywhere at any time? And that's probably a platform that's newer, a platform that is based on a COTS type of opportunity. But at this point, by June, Dr. Shulkin and his team would have assessed what we've laid out as that technical opportunity. and come back and we will have a solution.
So is Dr. Shulkin the one responsible for the policies and procedures and workflow and how they handle a call and handle an appointment? Is that the
sir.
right piece? Because ultimately, you're not responsible for scheduling. You're responsible for providing a platform in which other elements of the VA handle this, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because again, I think part of the problem is the processes that are in place, and you're delivering a system, you know, and if it's not being used properly, we're going to have problems. Mr. Aranti, do you have any opinions on the implementation of this software and how the other elements of the VA would be able to put the processes in place to ensure they're using this new tool properly?
Sir, I think our concern right now is this is new. And so we have not, as some of this is still being piloted, we haven't conducted any reviews. We plan to, and I'm going to have Mr. Bowman speak about some past experiences, but what's kind of long-standing that we have seen with VA is, with IT, they're trying to centralize at the headquarters level. I think the field is not always acceptable of that centralization. So sometimes we see in some of our previous work is there's a good plan and it looks good on paper, but getting out of the gate and getting it implemented seems to be some of the issues historically. Is that correct, Mike?
Anytime VA is involved with software development, it seems to be a high-risk venture. You know, some of the projects that we've looked at, VA tends to go over budget on costs. They seem to not deliver the intended functionality. So I think oversight of this project is essential, especially as it impacts veteran scheduling. VA just does not have a good history of delivering systems on time and within budget.
How long, Mr. Bowen, have you been part of the IG apparatus looking at the VA?
I've been with the IG for over 8 years.
So what were, you know, looking back at some of those failures, what would you say were some of the key reasons that those projects failed, you know, with hindsight as a benefit?
Yeah, a theme that comes through is ever-changing requirements. You've got the business owners that can't quite decide on what the functionality should be. So there's a lot of changing system requirements, functionality requirements, and that impacts the development time. It encourages rework, systems under development. But until you stabilize those requirements, you're really unable to meet any milestones or stay within project cost constraints.
Mr. Aranti, do you have any opinion? Ms. Counsel, do you have an opinion on what was just stated?
Yes, sir. I think Mr. Bowman is correct when you talk about waterfall. As we move to agile processing and using ITIL as our processes, you will see a marked difference in how we manage and work with our projects. So, for instance, we have implemented what has been called a best practice within the VA around projects and visibility and transparency. All projects on the Breakthrough 12, which you might have heard Secretary McDonald speak about, we actually have a governance committee that tracks against those, against resources, schedule, budget, and as well as ATO or security. We see that every week. I see them every week. And we also, if an issue is open, be it a business issue or a resource that we have and it goes longer than 10 days, we call a tech stat, which means they come and I'm there, as well as the head of the application area, as well as our CFO, and we make a decision. We are no longer waiting until we get the right requirements and keeping these things going. If it's the kind of work that needs to get done, well, we've asked the businesses to be prepared to do it. And with Agile, it is a side-by-side working, real-time relationship in the development of the solution. We're looking for a new transformation, and I would not attest anything that the gentleman mentioned in the past. What I'll be excited about is what they see in the future.
Amen to that. Mr. Aranti, some of the FISMA violations that are dating back to 2006, unsecured wireless networks and VA sites, lack of encryption on sensitive data, are those two issues that are still, that you have found are still problematic?
Yes, sir. We have repeat findings and recommendations and password protection or credentialing. For the last 3 years, they have clearly been repeat. And to us, I mean, the repeat findings, VA's enterprise infrastructure is huge. But some of these recommendations, and I think Ms. Council has addressed that, is that some of them I think are fairly simple to fix.
Yeah, for example, Ms. Council, you know, unsecured wireless networks and VA sites. How do you go about fixing that and getting that, getting compliant with that in the next few months? Talk me through the process of why something like that takes a while to do.
I think at times it probably took longer than it should have. We now have the same assessing software that the IG has, so that way we're looking at things in the same way. We make sure that we remediate early and often. We're tracking to those metrics, and we're actually going to grab all those metrics and make sure that we can also depict them out into the organization. One thing that was just mentioned was the field. In this transformation, we are also reorganizing for the first time what we do in the field. We are putting in a new help desk. We are reassessing and putting in service level agreements with all of our customers. We also will have customer relationship managers out in the field that will actually go across all the businesses to understand, is IT doing what it needs to do, and do we have situations where our business partners might need some opportunity in helping them understand how to have a more secure environment. We are, in addition, laying out a very different way of how we look at how we do services and what people are held accountable for. In addition, every goal that relates to our strategy is being cascaded into the leaders' goals and expectations for the year. So for us, we recognize exactly what we're hearing. It is not acceptable. We know now that 95% of the things that used to be in our, what we call our TIC, are now covered. Those 5% are more linkages between the VA and maybe university and third partners, but even that we need to provide some solutions to, and Brian and his team are doing that.
So I think this is my final question. Moving to email as a service, right? Why hasn't that been done before? Right? And I asked that question really to leverage your experience and vision as a tool to work with some of your peers in other departments. It seems so simple. It seems so basic. Why hasn't it been done before?
Well, I appreciate the question because my new principal deputy, Ron Thompson, who came from HHS, is actually spearheading that new contract. Email as a service will be our first move, and that should happen in the next 60 days or so, the finalization of that. We are working with GSA and really trying to get in the FedRAMP kind of environment. We feel that if the VA can participate, we can actually make it good for everyone because of our size, but also leveraging the solutions that are already out there. So we are looking at those vehicles and moving into them, and the first one is email as a service.
Great. You mentioned earlier your enterprise cybersecurity strategy. We'd love to have a copy of that if possible.
No problem.
The committee would love to have that. And as Congressman Farenthold mentioned, all of us in Congress, are dealing with veterans issues and the lack of service, right, and their frustrations. And I think you recognize the importance of your role because you and your team in OI&T can really be the unit that transforms how the VA delivers a service. And I appreciate your vision. I hope we have you around long enough in order to see that vision come through, and know on the employees and keeping, making sure you can hire and retain good employees. We're trying to work on ways to make that, more flexible. We're trying to work on ways on how IT procurement can be streamlined so you can move quicker. My friend Colonel McSally, Congresswoman McSally, always says, the bad guys are moving at the speed of light, and we're moving at the speed of bureaucracy. And if we can fix that, it will go a long way in order to serve those folks that have been willing to put themselves in harm's way in order to keep us safe at night. So I would like to thank you all for being here today. I would also like to thank the ranking member for always indulging my going over time, and for her willingness to work together on such an important issue. And thank you for taking the time to appear before us today. If there's no further business, without objection.